The Carolina Panthers released quarterback Baker Mayfield, prompting the question, should the Denver Broncos potentially make a claim on the former first overall pick in the 2018 NFL Draft? Plus, Russell Wilson finally played a preseason game? Sort of. We'll tell you what that means. Not to mention, is the Broncos' offensive problem solvable going forward? You get that and much more in today's brand new episode, Locked On Broncos.
You are Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, Broncos Country? Welcome into a brand new episode, Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Just want to say thank you so much, Broncos Country, for tuning in and making Locked On Broncos your first listen of the day, every single day, free and available everywhere you get your podcasts in audio format, or whether you're watching on YouTube. The fact that you still tune in despite this disappointing season means the world to us. Thank you so much, Broncos Country, from the South Stands to the end zone. I'm your host, as always, Cody Roark, Broncos reporter from Mile High Sports. Joined alongside, as always, by my co-host, Sayre Bedinger, site expert, predominantly orange.com. Sayre, my friend, look, this is a Chiefs week here for this Broncos football team. Obviously, we'll have some preview, some coverage of everything you need to know about that game coming up this week, but some interesting developments around the National Football League as it pertains to the quarterback position. Baker Mayfield, former first overall pick by the Cleveland Browns, former Carolina Panther now after he was released by the Panthers. Should the Broncos make a claim on him? And the reason I present this as a question, you and I, we talked about it on our previous episode, Locked On Broncos, last week. What should the Broncos do at quarterback, backup quarterback, QB2 beyond 2023, going into 2023? And Baker was one of those names that was kind of brought up in a sense. Now it looks like there's an opportunity for him to be available. Not necessarily saying that Baker's going to come in and compete with Russell Wilson. I know everyone's going to think, oh, because they titled it, should the Broncos claim Baker Mayfield? This is the subject matter. No, it's not. I mean, he obviously would not come in to compete with Russell Wilson. But I think Denver has a chance in terms of claiming him, bringing him in, making a claim if they wanted to, because they have a pretty low waiver order right now.
They do. I mean, they're third in the waivers right now, and that makes a huge difference, I think, in terms of whether or not you would do something like this, just because you have the opportunity that you wouldn't otherwise normally have. And right now, the Broncos sitting at third overall in that waiver process, they should be looking for ways to take advantage of that, right? I mean, obviously you don't want to be in that position, but if you get in that position, or if you find yourself in that position, it's kind of just like, well, when in Rome, sort of thing, you might as well do something with it. So Baker Mayfield going to cost less than $2 million. I know that even at his price point right now, there's 5 games left this season. He's going to cost over $1 million to bring in, but there's a lot of reasons for the Broncos to pick him up, Cody. First of all, Josh Johnson signing off the Broncos practice squad with San Francisco 49ers, going to go out there after Jimmy Garoppolo sadly broke his foot. And the 49ers are amidst a legitimate, title potential season. They could win the Super Bowl this year. Their defense is that good, and they have great playmakers offensively. So Josh Johnson is going to join that squad. The Broncos need another quarterback. They missed out on Joshua Dobbs, who came in for a workout last week. He's signing, according to Mike Kliss, with Detroit Lions. So the Broncos are in the market for a quarterback right now. They need somebody to come in. And I think Baker Mayfield is intriguing because it gives you the opportunity, if you are George Paton, if you're the coaching staff, if you're the ownership group, whoever, to see what it's like if Baker Mayfield is in the same QB room as Russell Wilson. Because like you mentioned, we talked about, the potential of QB2 being upgraded next offseason. Could that be Baker Mayfield? And I think absolutely it could be, because he's talented. He's a former number 1 pick, like you mentioned. He's available right now. You can kind of see, is there chemistry there between those guys in the QB room? How does he work as a backup? Is he a viable option? And I think, that it just all makes sense to me. You have all these different factors lining up. Worst case scenario, right? He's going to be a free agent in 2023. He signs with another team. And the worst case scenario is he potentially factors in to your compensatory draft pick formula, signing with another team as a free agent. How many more reasons do we need for the Broncos to make this move? And why do I feel like they simply won't?
Yeah, I mean, this is a question too, and I posted a tweet on Twitter, and I was asking Broncos Country, with where Denver sits in the order right now, should the Broncos make a claim? And I think a majority of the fan base is like, nah, they shouldn't do it. California Orange and Blue says, nah, the next head coach and offensive coordinator will want their own pick at backup. No sense in throwing away $1 million for a bench warmer. Maybe an interesting point there. Paul Liane says, didn't the Niners just claim Josh off our practice squad? Who is our number 3rd if Wilson gets hurt? Then this is a great point right here to this exact point that we're making. Like, you have Russell Wilson, you have Brett Rippon. If someone goes down, like, Denver is stuck in quarterback purgatory in the sense of they have nobody out there. And then you're relegated to Brandon McManus being your emergency backup quarterback. I'm sorry, folks. I do not want to see that. And that is not even with how bad the season is going. I would never want to see that happen. McKinley G says, what the hell? Why not at this point in time? So there's that. Bryce says he's owed $1.35 million this year and then becomes a free agent. No one is claiming that except teams needing a quarterback for a playoff push. I mean, San Francisco was a name that was mentioned, but as you mentioned, they just claimed Josh Johnson. Now he's off the practice squad. He's on their active roster now. He and Brock Purdy in San Francisco. Get a resounding nope. CG Orange Crushes, why not? We clearly don't have a capable number 2 backup. I think Brett Rippon's a good backup. Here's my thing. Is he going to be the flashy guy? Probably not. I think he's a good guy to have on your roster, though, because when you look at it, who's beyond Justin Herbert? You have some other guys. I mean, I think Brett Rippon has the Chase Daniel capability to him. I think he's a good backup quarterback. Is he going to be a starter? Probably not. So I don't know about that. Everyone else says nope. And then, yeah, I mean, at this point, he says, why do that to him? Y'all mean, okay. I mean, and then somebody even responded, don't they already have a Baker? So, I mean, this is where we're at right now in Broncos country, Sayre. I mean, everyone is like, I don't know. It's like, I'm not opposed to having a guy like Baker Mayfield as a QB2 on your team going forward. I think that he's very capable. I think that at this point in time, he's probably going to be relegated to being a backup. He's probably going to accept that role a lot earlier than Carson Wentz did at this point in time.
Yeah, I think so too. And that's one of the number one reasons why you go and make this move, because I think Baker and his camp, they have to understand his best chance at sticking around in the NFL at this point is proving himself as a backup. And really, I don't think there's anybody in the 2023 quarterback market that is going to see him as a starter, that's going to view him as a starter. Of course, you'd love, if you're Baker Mayfield, you would love to go from the Carolina Panthers, and previously before that, obviously the Cleveland Browns. You'd love to be able to go to San Francisco with Kyle Shanahan, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey, the number 1 defense in the NFL. Who wouldn't want that? I mean, and for the Carolina Panthers to just say, yeah, absolutely, we'll give you that opportunity and subject him to waivers. Good on the Carolina Panthers for doing that and taking less of a draft pick, or sending less of a draft pick, I suppose, at this point to Cleveland for having Baker as long as they did. So it's really fascinating, Cody. I mean, to me, if I understand both sides of what people are saying, like, what's the point in that type of thing? But like, look, at this point, the Broncos need to get their best possible look at the future of the team. If Baker Mayfield is going to be your QB2 going forward, or if you want to consider him, you have an active opportunity to like audition him, to give him sort of an internship. I know it's $1.35 million, but what do we always say? Number one, it's not your money. Number two, I mean, the Broncos have tons of money now. They have the richest owners in the NFL. So who really cares? And I think that, Baker Mayfield coming in, it's an upside dart throw as a QB2. I don't know. It's something that I certainly wouldn't argue against.
Yeah, I think the opportunity presents itself. I think Denver should at least take a look in this situation. We'll find out in the next 24 to 48 hours if the Broncos decidedly do that at this point in time. But Broncos country, what if I told you that Broncos quarterback Russell Wilson finally played a preseason game, sort of, and we talk about how that was the case in Sunday's game against the Baltimore Ravens. You get that on today's episode, Locked On Broncos. But this episode of the show is brought to you by LinkedIn. And these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free, and you can create a free job post in minutes at LinkedIn Jobs. Then all you do is add your job in the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread word that you are hiring. They have simple tools like screening questions that make it easy to focus on candidates with just just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. Make sure you close out the year strong with the right team member to do just that. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. What if we were to tell you that Broncos quarterback Russell Wilson finally played in a preseason game that everybody wanted to see him play back in August? Well, Broncos Country, that was sort of the case here this past weekend against the Baltimore Ravens. Thank you so much, Broncos Country, for tuning in, making Locked On Broncos your first listen of the day every single day. We appreciate you so much for bearing with us through this disappointing season. Your emotions, your interaction have meant the world to all of us this year. We appreciate your insight and your opinion. And make sure if you're watching on YouTube, you comment, hit the like button as well for the algorithm. But Sayre, I saw a tweet you posted on Twitter, and it prompted me to say, hey, you know what? This is a great idea to talk about this because everybody in August was saying Russell Wilson should have played in the preseason. Well, he kind of played a preseason game in the regular season, sort of, against the Ravens.
He did against a team that, as we knew coming into this game, was top 5 in the NFL in sacks. One of the faster defenses, I would say, kind of all around, even with all the injuries that they've had on that side of the ball this season. Russell Wilson went out there, Cody. I mean, let's just look up and down the lineup for the Broncos in terms of, I checked out the top guys in terms of snaps played in this game. The starting lineup or the main lineup for the Denver Broncos here. Russell Wilson at the quarterback, obviously. Latavius Murray played the lion's share of snaps at the running back position. He was on a practice squad to start this season. The top wide receivers that played in this game in terms of snap counts, Brandon Johnson and Kendall Hinton, followed by Cortland Sutton, who went down with a hamstring injury. And then after him, Jerry Jeudy played a bit. Montrell Washington played a bit. Jalen Virgil. These are guys that, Cody, we saw starring with Josh Johnson and Brett Rippon in the preseason. I mean, this is not even a joke. Greg Dulcich, who didn't play in the preseason, led the tight ends in snaps, but quickly behind him was Eric Saubert, Eric Tomlinson, the offensive line, Calvin Anderson at left tackle, Dalton Reisner at left guard, Graham Glasgow at the center, Quinn Miners right guard, right tackle was Cam Fleming in this game. Look, I mean, I'm not one to make excuses, Cody. And I think a lot of people would see it differently. Like a lot of people have accused me throughout the course of time of making a lot of excuses. I like to think of them as valid reasons at this point. Here's the stance that I'm firmly taking, the hill that I'm dying on, the take that I'm staking my reputation on right here. I refuse to believe that Russell Wilson has become this bad this fast. I think there's a number of factors at play here. And I needed to set this disclaimer. Russell has not played good enough. And I think both of us would say that. Russell has not played good enough, but I think he's playing injured with multiple injuries at that. I think that the Broncos lineup is absolutely terrible. And I think that they failed, especially after the Tim Patrick injury, to properly address the wide receiver position. You had to know going into the season you were going to get barely anything, if anything, from KJ Hamler. You had two other guys, Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy, that have had major injuries recently. The Broncos personnel is not good. It's terrible. It's the worst that I've seen in recent memory. And I don't think it's an excuse at this point to say everybody wants Russell Wilson to elevate these guys, but he's trying to make, a 5-star meal for somebody. And he's working out there with the ingredients that like my kids like to eat for lunch, like pizza rolls and chicken nuggets and frozen foods and stuff. It's like, it's not, you can't make it happen. Okay. It's only going to be what it is. And I don't mean any disrespect to the guys that played. They're out there playing their butts off. They're working hard. They deserve respect for getting to the point that they're at. But man, at this point, Cody, that's my rant on this. That's the take that I'm willing to stake my kind of reputation as a media person on, because I just refuse to believe that Russell Wilson has become this bad this fast.
I think this is some things that we've talked about as well. I think there's some validity to it, right? And coming into the season, you and I were on the record of saying, hey, Broncos country, don't get too invested in KJ Hamler because he's working his way back from an ACL. He's working his way back from the hip. It's going to take some time for him to get back there. But we didn't envision as well him suffering another injury, which being the hamstring now that has placed him on injured reserve. And I see a lot of negative commentary about KJ Hamler out there from Broncos fans. I just want to preface this by saying, like, these players don't choose to get injured, right? And KJ Hamler, like, this is a guy I'm seeing every day at the team facility working his tail off to try to get ready. And it's unfortunate that he suffered a hamstring injury and it was a setback. And it's not his fault. Don't be mad at KJ Hamler. Yes, it's frustrating. Yes, the Broncos spent a second-round pick on him, and it hasn't panned out in terms of the production so far, yes, and availability and consistency. We understand all these things. But I think a lot of fans take things a little too far when it comes to players who are injured by attacking them for being injured as if it was their choice to get hurt. Please stop doing that. That is not the right thing to do for anything in the world of sports. If you're a true fan of anything that has to do with sports, do not get on athletes for getting hurt. That's not their fault. They're working towards it. They're trying to get on the field, trying to do everything as they can to help the team there. So it's unfortunate. It's bad luck. It is what it is. Let's just call it that. But I think, Sayre, you can also make the argument with what you mentioned, and as you mentioned, no disrespect to any of the guys that are playing, Denver might have the worst personnel right now in the National Football League on the offensive side of the ball. With Courtland Sutton going down with the injury, that was huge, but Courtland wasn't playing that good as well either. He's going through his own ups and downs and struggles of trying to, I say, maybe be the number one guy in a room that, was missing Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler, Tim Patrick. I think we see how much Tim Patrick has been the glue guy to that team. And look, Tim travels with the team. He's everywhere. He's with them. He's got a voice there. So he has taken that leadership role, out there with these guys. But you got Kendall Hinton, Brandon Johnson, Jalen Virgil, these guys that are stepping up. These are young guys, right? But when you look at their status overall, Kendall Hinton, Brandon Johnson, Jalen Virgil, 3 undrafted rookie free agents that have made it to an active roster at this point in time. There's development that still needs to be had with these guys, and that's not a knock or an indictment on them. But this is where the Broncos are at. This is where Russell Wilson is at. And with this offensive line that seemingly can't get any push to create any opportunities in the run game, it is hard for the Broncos offense that's already struggling and at a historically bad pace, I think, to improve, which leads us to the next point, Sayre. Supporting cast in the National Football League is very important, and so many other teams right now are showcasing that very thing.
They are, Cody. I think one of the prime examples is that I legitimately see, and I'm not going to name any names because these people, there's going to be receipts out there for a while unless they delete these tweets. But I saw a lot of people on Sunday talking about how Brock Purdy is better than Russell Wilson because he was out there making plays with the 49ers offense. And I legitimately saw it multiple times, Cody. So, I mean, it's something that you sit there and you're like, man, like things are really bad right now, aren't they? Because people are actually saying this Mr. Irrelevant from this year's NFL draft. But I think that what people are their sentiment is correct. Like Brock Purdy is thriving in a better environment because why? Because he has great playmakers out there, because he has great coaching. The Broncos have none of that. They don't have playmakers on the field. They don't have great coaching right now. Their scheme is not good. There's guys that are just, they're either playing hurt or they're just, I don't know what the whole set of factor is, Cody, but there's too much out there right now you see in the NFL. I think a great point was made to me by a good friend on Twitter, and it's something that I think is worth considering, right? There's so many different examples of this in the NFL now. Josh Allen, pre-Stephon Diggs and after Stephon Diggs. Tua Tagovailoa, pre-Mike McDaniel and Tyreek Hill, and now post-Mike McDaniel and Tyreek Hill. You could go up and down the line, the list. Kirk Cousins with Justin Jefferson. You look at San Francisco as obviously a big thing. Tom Brady when he was with the Patriots, or even this year with the Buccaneers and them struggling with offensive line and playmaker injuries. I mean, it's just, I don't know if people understand or realize how important it is to have the right coaching and the right guys around you to be able to have success in the NFL. The Broncos are obviously feeling it in a very, very desperate way.
Well, and that begs the question, is the Broncos' offensive problem solvable going forward? That's a great question, and we'll get some deeper insight into this. We'll take a look at every side of the coin on today's episode, Locked On Broncos. This episode of the show is brought to you by our friends over at Audible, and Audible is releasing a slate of new football podcasts that we're sure that you're absolutely going to love, and that's why you'll be able to find a sneak peek of Block Forever available now on Locked On NFL right now. Block Forever is a brand new podcast from former NFL All-Pro Ryan Khalil and Audible. Khalil takes the conversation about football to the next level. He gives football fans an insider's look at the game through the eyes of the greatest players and personalities of all time. Khalil sits down with star players, coaches, and former pros across the league to get real about what happens on the field and behind the scenes, inside locker rooms, during team meetings, and at the team hotel. You'll hear from Christian McCaffrey talk about his love-hate relationship with fantasy football, and Juju Smith-Schuster giving his most honest opinions on other players and positions in the league. New episodes of Block Forever will be recorded and released every week ahead of Thursday Night Football. Available for free on Audible or wherever you get your podcast. So head over to Locked On NFL for a sneak peek of Block Forever or catch the full series, available anywhere you get your podcast. Available everywhere now. Audible, get in the game. Is the Broncos' offensive problem solvable, Sayre? This is a $245 million question that we've been asking ourselves. And I think that right now, when we ask most Broncos fans this question right now, Sayre, and I think that even if you ask us, considering the emotion, the freshness of how just bad this season has gone in accordance to expectations, I think most people will say, it doesn't feel like it can be solved, right? And I'd say that right now, looking at it, it feels like this is an unsolvable problem. But I think that sometimes when we get so caught up in the emotion of what's happening, just how bad things are, it allows us to kind of lose perspective a little bit. And what I mean by that is, as bad as things look right now, I think you can look at other examples around the National Football League and you can say, okay, hey, you know what? Previously, they had problems. And then in just an offseason, they were able to solve them. So it's like you mentioned, like, for example, Miami Dolphins, they were terrible offensively under Brian Flores. Mike McDaniel comes in, all of a sudden, they have one of the top offenses in the National Football League. And granted, Tyreek Hill helps, Jalen Waddle helps, personnel helps. But Tua is playing some of his best football and a coach that believes in him in a system that fits what he's able to do really well. San Francisco seems like a system that is really kind of just infirmed that, okay, hey, even if we lose our quarterback, we can still operate at a high, modus of standing there. And I think that that's one thing that has been lost in all the things, because Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, coming in is still lighting things up system, right? You have Mike White coming in, and, I think he kind of came back down to earth a little bit this week for the New York Jets, but, him still kind of lighting things up a little bit versus, in the system that Zach Wilson struggled with. I think system has a lot to do with a lot of these things. And I feel like I'd be remiss here if I don't bring up Daniel Jones and the New York Giants.
Yeah, there's plenty of examples out there. I mean, it's clear to me, Cody, the answer to the question is yes, it is fixable. The question is whether the Broncos will be able to find the right people to put in place, because right now, who wants to come in and try to fix, quote unquote, fix the Russell Wilson offense? Well, money talks, and it's a really, really good time to have the richest owner in pro football, the richest ownership group in pro football, because the Broncos, I think, Cody, are going to have to throw some money at a new coach to come in and try to fix this thing and be willing to kind of stake their reputation or their following jobs after that on whether or not they can fix it, because it's going to be absolutely critical. But I think, man, it's so clear to me. Remember how unpopular the decision was at the time for Miami to fire Brian Flores. They are coming off 2 winning seasons in terms of win-loss record. They didn't make the playoffs, but still the defense was playing extremely well. And when is the last time the Dolphins had 2 straight winning seasons, right? So firing Brian Flores, very unpopular move. But now Mike McDaniel has that offense absolutely humming. I mean, I see guys like Trent Sherfield out there making big plays in that offense. And so it's Tyreek Hill is a big factor in it. But man, it's a lot scheme. It's a lot coaching. And you hear some of the mic'd up, and I'll use Mike McDaniel as an example, because you hear the mic'd up situations of him on the sideline with Tua Tagovailoa, and you hear him talking to him. You hear there was a mic'd up clip of him talking to Tua about like his high school tape. He's like, I watched your high school highlight reel. Your footwork was terrible, or something like that. And he was just like, he comes into that building and he truly believes in the guy, and he sets something up to where he can succeed, and he's getting the best out of him. And that's not to say that these coaches are puppeteers out there just pulling all the strings, but I think it matters so much more than people care to admit. They would rather believe that Russell Wilson is washed up. They'd rather wash their hands of him and move on than to believe that, scheme and playmakers and offensive line and penalties and all these different things, those have nothing to do with it. It's Russell Wilson is washed, and that's it. I refuse to believe that, Cody. So my answer is absolutely yes. This can be fixed. You upgrade personnel in the offseason. You change the coaching staff. Unfortunately, we've talked about it. Nathaniel Hackett seems like a really good guy, seems like a really nice guy, but not the fit for this quarterback. And you have to do anything and everything that you can, as we saw the Dolphins do this past offseason, to make sure that your quarterback is in an environment where he can succeed.
Well, Broncos Country, we are eager for your thoughts on this subject matter. Make sure if you're listening on your favorite audio podcasting platform that you could tweet us on Twitter at Cody Roark NFL, at Sayre Bedinger, at Locked On Broncos. Or if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you comment your thoughts down below. Make sure you hit that like button as well so it pushes this video out to more members in Broncos Country. We appreciate you so much for tuning into today's episode of the show. The Broncos now shift their focus to prepare for the Kansas City Chiefs. We'll see if they make a claim on Baker Mayfield. We'll see what they do now that Josh Johnson is not on the practice squad as he's gone to the San Francisco 49ers. How does Denver address this week? You get that much more all throughout this week here, Locked On Broncos.